Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we are here to discuss a very interesting and important subject, the name change of PCOS. My name is Olga Haapa-aho, and I'm the executive director in the gynecological patient organization, Korento, here in Finland. And today, as our expert on the subject, we have Terhi Piltonen to answer our questions. Would you like to start by introducing yourself, Terhi, and welcome?
Thank you. Thank you, Olga. It's really nice to be here to talk about this very important topic. So I'm a professor in obstetrics and gynecology here in Oulu, Finland, quite up in the north, and also I'm the current president of the International PCOS Society, and I've been involved in this process from the beginning. So in that sense, I'm very proud to talk about it here on this forum. On the other hand, my team has been working on PCOS and the related problems for a really long time, over 25 years. So I've been watching this field for a long time, and I can really see where this project and this effort now stands.
Thank you. And would you like to tell a little bit more uh, about the subjects, how and why you have been involved in the name change process?
So I think what is really important to grasp is that this is not a short decision. This is not a quick decision to make. It's a big effort, and it has been ongoing for the last 15 years. And there have been several colleagues that have been working on this field for a long time, and they have raised now and then some topics, or they have written an article. Should we change the name? And is it time to change the name of the polycystic ovary syndrome? And I think by looking at it back, there has not been a rigorous process, and now we have this rigorous process ongoing. And I think it was just about the time we have been working with the Professor Helena Tid with the international guidelines. They were published in 2018, and then we updated in 2023. And then I think this is a very logical process after that that we consider whether we have done everything to improve the healthcare for these particular individuals. And I think this is part of this whole process. And in that way, I see this really important. But it took a quite an effort to come to this conclusion that we're going to change the name. Over the last, let's say, 3 years, there have been over 22,000 questions or questionnaires. Um, Post I'm sorry, there have been over 22,000 answers of these questions whether the name should be changed. And these questions have been targeted for the healthcare professionals and the women with the conditions and their relatives. And about 84% of them, people have responded that they think that it's about time to change the name. So it has been a process, and now we are in that virtue that we have now gathered over 100 people representing over 56 organizations. And with this rigorous process, we have now come up with this new name, and the particular words in that particular name.
Thank you. And then the most important thing, so the new name of PCOS is PMOS. So would you like to share with us what does this mean and why was it decided to change the name of the syndrome in the end?
So, well, if we think about how does polycystic ovary syndrome, how does it sound to you? I think we can all agree that it really puts kind of the emphasis on the ovary and the cyst. And the fact that this syndrome actually does not have increased number of cysts, we just are going to publish the only population-based data on this particular trait, that the women with PCOS do not have increased ovarian cysts. They actually have small ovarian follicles. Everybody who are familiar with the syndrome and the ultrasound finding is that they are not cysts. They are small little follicles that have oocyte in them. So actually, it's a very lush ovary, and it doesn't mean that the ovary is somehow distorted, or that it has this cyst that can burst, or they can can rupture or things like that. They need to be medically treated. But in fact, it's a lush ovary with the lots of oocytes, and it does come with the hormonal dysregulation that links to anovulation, and of course the central mechanism, or the central feedback from the pituitary is of course very central here as well. But it's not about the cyst, and in fact it's not only about the ovary either. And in fact, if we look at the overall picture, the women are at risk for several health conditions. And then the ovary represents only the reproductive part. The women, they are at risk for pregnancy complications and anovulation. They might experience infertility more often than other women. But in fact, 80% in Finland, 80% of the pregnancies of these women, they actually are spontaneous. So spontaneous pregnancies do occur, and the women should know that. But with the obesity, that the anovulation actually gets worse, and then some of the women might need some help from the IVF clinic, and there you actually achieve at least, as often one child as the other women. And in Finland, actually, the women have even higher number of pregnancies than other women. So in fact, we should look away from the ovary, look into more like general aspects of health for these women. And this actually now comes to the name changing process. So the polyendocrine metabolic ovarian syndrome. So now we have talked about the ovary. That is the same. The ovary is the same word that we had already in the previous name. So that's excellent. But the endocrine part, the polyendocrine means that there are other endocrine aspects involved. So not only ovarian hormones, but actually other hormones that are related to appetite and glucose metabolism, satiety, etc. So they are in a key role. And then the metabolic part, that is very crucial as the women experience having type 2 diabetes early than other women. They are at risk for having it, and they get the diagnosis, or they start exhibiting this health problem about 10 years earlier than other women. So it's very crucial that we can catch the women early enough to be able to treat them, so that the diabetes doesn't do its work over the time without people knowing about it, because that's really dangerous. So I think pushing the treatment and the diagnosis earlier is now facilitated by this name change. And then we already talked about the ovarian part, and then we have the old part also about the syndrome. So this is not a disease, it's a syndrome, which means that there are a group of different traits and symptoms that are, and there is a susceptibility for different diseases, but itself, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome. So that's also very important to realize now when we are talking about the name. So I think now with the new name, I think we're going to put it on a better box, so to say, on the right table for the right people to see it, because now we have been really focusing on the reproductive functions, and mainly the diagnosis, at least in Finland, they have to come from the obstetrics and gynecologists, usually the IVF doctors, but specifically. And then the other field, the internal medicines, the general practitioners, especially general practitioners, who can actually start taking care of these women, diagnose and start taking care of them already at the primary care. They should be aware of this condition, and also, for example, dermatologists, psychologists, etc. So I think there is a really room for the name change, and I think it's going to make a big difference for the treatment and management of these women.
Thank you. You described very well on how the new name describes the various aspects of the syndrome better than the old one. Do you have anything to add on the subject? Why the old name was not so good, and why the new name is better and describes the syndrome more accurately?
Sure. I think another thing is that the women themselves, and also, well, let's talk about the women themselves. I think For me, in the beginning, I thought that, maybe we should stick with the old acronym at least. Um, but I think that the women themselves who have the conditions, they felt very strongly about the fact that they want to have a change. They also felt like they have not been heard, and we know this already from several publications, that the women themselves, they report that they are not heard in the healthcare. They are often misunderstood. They are untreated. They are turned away from the healthcare, and they feel like that that their symptoms have not been taken seriously, and they have not been taken seriously. And I think this will bring a change into this problem. And then, as a scientist, clinical scientist, I do have to say also that, for example, grants, the money that has been, giving out, for example, different endocrine conditions like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, these women actually represent one of the highest risk populations of these conditions in the whole female population. And it's a very prevalent conditions. About 16% of women will have this. So I think it's right for them to be also part of those um, grants and the opportunities to improve the management and the whole scientific field regarding their condition. I think they have right to have that resource also tagged under them. And now when we have been quite in a narrow space of, for example, reproductive health or IVF even, it has not, you know, got that attention and that money and that resource that we need to really build a better healthcare management, and kind of I think about also the pathogenesis of this condition. So in all of the senses, like in many ways, I think this is an improvement.
Yes, I understand very well. We also have noticed in our surveys and in the feedback that we get in the patient organization that the symptoms are not taken seriously, and also people have experienced that there is not enough knowledge in the healthcare system or among the healthcare professionals. So yeah, I agree with you. So your personal opinion is that this is a good decision?
Yeah, so I do have to say that I was hesitant in the beginning. I do have
Yeah.
to say that I was a little bit worried about the dissemination and are we going to lose some of the work that we've already, some of the results that we've already worked so hard over the years. And I think we have been able to push the name into the field already during the last 5 years maybe, or less than 10 years. But on the other hand, we have to remember that this is not, for example, I need to think this is not my decision. It's not about me. It's actually about other women who have this condition. So I think we need to hear them. And they had very strong feeling about the fact that they want to have a change. They didn't, I think the overall feedback from the patient organizations was that by having the old acronym, even just, the changing the words behind it would not be enough. That it would not change enough of the field to make like an actual change. And by hearing this and also talking with some of my colleagues, in several countries, I think this is right, and I think I'm very happy that we have something from the old name. That was also a marketing consultation to talk about, whether we should have something from the old name, and they've really thought that that's a great idea to have something old, something that we can familiarize ourselves. But on the other hand, that we have like a completely new identified items in that name, and I think we came out really really good. But it was not an easy process when we were thinking about, should we have, for example, cardiometabolic instead of metabolic so that we can really target that cardiometabolic risk that the women have. But on the other hand, we thought that maybe it's enough to have it under metabolic because then we have for example, diabetes under it. So it's more kind of a vaster umbrella than just the cardiometabolic items. And then, of course, reproductive versus ovary, and then thinking about that not all women are considered to have children. They don't want to have children. They don't consider that part of their life. And then over is maybe less stigmatizing. We also need to really think about the cultural aspects and thinking that people are living with this name, with this condition position in their particular society. So I think there were lots of cultural aspects, and there was a very rigorous process thinking that kind of screening throughout these items and the name and the acronym whether it stands for something else that we actually don't want to, and that was a very high priority as well. And then that the name is scientifically accurate. I think we had several kind of discussions about that, that I think it's as a professional, I find that we need to have a scientifically sound name. And for example, there was one option to include the name ovulatory, but on the other hand, ovulation doesn't, women become ovulatory later in life, and then after menopause the syndrome doesn't go away, but the ovulations are not, they are not they are not current there anymore. The ovary has shut down itself. So these things that we need to make sure that it represents the whole spectrum of life course, and it's a scientifically sound. All these things, were considered on this really, really rigorous process, and now we are here with this name, and I do have to say I'm very happy about it.
Well, the process has been long, but then in a way, the work is only in the beginning now. So, how do you think the new name will be implemented?
Hmm. Well, I think I agree. I think lots of the people have been a little bit intimidated. How are we going to do all this? And do you have to say that the work actually starts now? So even though there's been a long process, there is a lots of things to do from now on, and of course we're going to distribute this across the scientific field, and also the societies, and how to do that. There is a strategy that has been just, it's ongoing process also to lay that process out, and we have engaged over 56 international organizations that are representing the patients and the healthcare system, different disciplines. So I'm hoping that and I think that was how they have been also signed in for this project, is that they really commit themselves on disseminating this new name into their space wherever they are. So I think with that help, and then the fact that that the Monash University, and then our International Peace Society, and then Verity, who is now kind of representing all the patient organizations in this process, that with these three different pillars that we have, I think we can organize it so that I'm hoping that during the next 3 years that is going to be overlapping with the old name and the new name, we'll be able to really solve all the technical problems, and also engaging people to really do this dissemination work. But I think we need everybody, even the people who are there listening this. We not need all of you to do this. It's going to need all of us. So I hope that everybody are up for it.
Yes, definitely. So, what would you say to those who feel that changing the name is happening at a bad time when PCOS has only recently started to gain more visibility? For example, in the media, at least here in Finland, we have seen that PCOS has been in the media a lot more than before. What
Mm.
would you say to those people?
I understand the worry. And certainly that has been also discussed a lot during this process. And I think everybody shares the worry. And of course, we need to think that this decision has been made in a good will, so that we think that it's going to serve the women really, really well. But there's going to be an overlap. It's a systemic process. There are other conditions that have very, successfully changed their name, and the dissemination work for some of them, it's still ongoing. But I think we are very positively thinking about this, and as I said, there are so many organizations involved, but it does going to need some time. So we cannot be kind of too anxious about it to have the change coming overnight. It's going to take a while, and I think it's a very good moment, because we're going to have our momentum now. When the name is going to change, it's going to draw lots of attention now. So I think it's a good way also to draw attention for the syndrome itself. So I think we're going to use that, and we should use that little window that we're going to have now. But of course, there are going to be other news and we're going to have like a the spotlight is going to turn away to something else, after we have launched the name. But doing this really rigorously and as a long process, overlapping with the old name, and there are technical things that we can do to link them, for example, in the search machines, and use AI and it's different tools. There is a process and there are tools to do this. So I would say that relax and let's just try to make everybody make their own effort to really disseminate this name, so the new name. So I'm very hopeful that we are going to achieve a nice result in the next 3 years.
Thank you so much. I think that's a good thought to end our discussion, and thank you so much, Terhi, for giving answers to our questions.
Thank you for this, bringing this really important momentum to everybody's knowledge. Thank you.